folks from the pharma world here, and it's one of those areas that is still ripe for disruption, not just developing drugs, but how we get them to market and through clinical trials. And we're going to lead off this session on the future of pharma with physician scientist Noah Kraft, no relation, who is the co-founder and CEO of a very fast-moving organization, Science 37, that's really changing the way we're doing clinical trials. Dr. Noah Kraft.
Thanks, Daniel. Thanks, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm known as Dr. Kraft number 2, or the other Dr. Kraft. He spells his wrong, but it's okay. No, it's a pleasure to be here and an honor. I'm a recovering academic and a physician scientist. I used to run a translational research lab at Harbor UCLA. It's a part of the county health system in Los Angeles. And so I'm a dermatologist and tropical medicine expert clinically, and I'm a microbiologist, immunologist by PhD. And so for about 8 years, I ran a lab where we went from bench sequencing, et cetera, to animal models to human trials. But I lived and breathed NIH grants and funding that came in cycles like that. And we set out to kind of change how we take care of the underserved patients or underappreciated problems with our lab and in our clinical practice. But then a few things started to happen to me. So about 7 or 8 years ago, a group of us started a telemedicine company in the private sector that was focused on bringing expert care to the underserved of California. And then about 6 years ago, I left my academic post and became the chief medical officer for Enterprise Healthcare Software Company. That's where I met Daniel actually at TEDMed in a prior life. And then about 4.5 years ago, some friends at Qualcomm introduced me to the innovation group at Genentech. And before 4.5 years ago, I had never done industry-sponsored trials or frankly thought about how drugs come to market. But I did have about 5 or 6 patents locked up in the freezer in my lab, and I was wondering why they were still in the freezer. So 4.5 years ago, some friends introduced me to Genentech, and Genentech taught me as a consultant about this huge problem. Why does it take 12, 15 years and $2.5 billion to develop drugs? And why are less than 10% of the participants in our trials in the US minorities? And so they taught me about this problem, and I'm going to talk to you about kind of the why and the solution that we brought to the table and what we've done in the past 4 years. It's been a wild ride to go from recovering academic to chief medical officer of a software company to CEO of a fast-growing, very disruptive company. So just to give you an overview, probably I'm preaching to the choir here, but the big problem, 37,000 feet, is it takes a long time, it's very expensive to develop new drugs. I used to believe that pharma was just greedy and it really wasn't true, and now that I've learned about it, it's actually true. The scientists involved in developing drugs are just like me. They're wanting to find new cures, and it takes a long time, and it's really expensive, and it's because the system is broken. You can measure the value of time by dollars, so every day that a drug's not in the market can be $2.5 million, and even if a drug's going to tank, it can be $3 to $5 million per month just to run trials that are going to fail. So the current system is that sponsor, Genentech, would hire a CRO like Quintiles, and then that CRO would hire 200 different sites or hospitals around the globe, and then those doctors at those sites would just wait for patients to go to those sites. So I want to do a quick survey. How many people have ever been in a clinical trial? And how many people, if you had a chronic disease that didn't have a good treatment, would want to be in a clinical trial? Okay, so actually a little lower than normal. So they taught me about this problem. This is the status quo. And I've surveyed many audiences, but if you do these general surveys, close to 90% of people want to be in a clinical trial. And so why don't they participate? Why do less than 3% of you take part in clinical trials? Again, all this was taught to me by Genentech. So the real answer is access. So more than 70% of people live more than 2 hours drive from those 200 sites I just told you about. 2/3 of people or their doctors never hear about clinical trials, and 2/3 of people don't trust some part of the system. So we used a lot of artificial intelligence, blockchain, a lot of statistical tests, and we did a root cause analysis, and we came up with this idea that people live in their homes and doctors live in hospitals. This was our final conclusion. Occasionally the doctors go home, but this is the main analysis. We didn't use any of that. This is the main problem. People are at home, doctors are in clinics, and you need to fix this problem. And other companies and other systems have been disrupted in the same way. But let me just take a step back to say yesterday, and you've heard a lot about this from other speakers today and yesterday people went to the hospital, there's bricks, there's mortar, there's beams, etc., and doctors, and you can bring technology there. Today there's all kinds of technology for the patients, the doctors, etc., and healthcare itself is highly complicated. I've seen like 5 slides like this today. This is healthcare and data flow, and we're up there somewhere. I think in the bottom right corner, there's a tiny 37 you can see there. But it's a complicated system. As Trump says, who knew healthcare could be so complicated? I think everyone in the room knows it's quite complicated. And it is a highly regulated environment. So what we do at Science 37 I'll get to, but it is not a job you can have a few 25-year-old people in a garage building an app to disrupt clinical trials and healthcare in general. So what we did was we started Science 37, and it wasn't that easy to get a lot of mid-career professionals, physicians, scientists, lawyers, technologists to quit their jobs and work for free for a while. It wasn't that easy. But we decided that the problem was so great, it's a societal problem of developing new cures, and it's the problem of the individual scientists. So it's my problem, and why my patents are in the freezer is because I cannot take a drug to market. I cannot test it in hundreds or thousands of people by myself. It's an exceptionally hard problem. So our mission at Science 37 is actually to accelerate anybody's biomedical research by putting patients first, and I'll tell you how we do that. It's not to be rich, it's not to be famous, it's to build a platform that any scientist or any biotech company or any individual patient can interact with in the name of discovery. And we focus on the patients because like other systems, like when there's a natural disaster like a tsunami, everyone in the country or everyone in the world wants to donate $10, right? And if you had to get out a piece of paper and a pen and a stamp and an envelope and a check to donate $10, you wouldn't do it. But now you just text a few digits to AT&T and everyone can donate $10 instantaneously. It allows something that people want to do to happen because you make it easy. So we put patients at the center of things, and at Science 37, what Salim was mentioning this morning, we had to get outside the mothership. So we had to quit academia and quit the whole system and build an entirely new ecosystem to develop this, breaking down silos, payer barriers, system barriers, protectionism of like, these are my patients and my data, so you can't have it, and actually job descriptions, because what we do is wildly different than being a normal doctor who has patients one by one every day. We have a North Star to create a universal medical scientific ecosystem so anybody anywhere can connect to any scientist anywhere in the name of discovery, and you should be able to do this, and I'll tell you what we've done so far. Go. There we go. This is an article that was written a couple years ago or a year and a half ago about us. Clinical trial utopia is what we call our business. So now, it wasn't always that easy. And there are people in this room who would say, wait a minute here, we're not going to do this new telemedicine technology. It's impossible to take care of patients safely. We run into a lot of people that are the naysayers. And so the early days were tough. They're still tough. There's a lot of people who don't believe in new ideas. But we believe in this idea that you can use technology to bridge the gap between clinics or where doctors work and patients' telemedicine. So we developed a company before this company that brought dermatology care directly to patients in the middle of nowhere. You can also use technology to bridge the gap between clinics and research, and we did that by developing the EMR that's focused on research. And what we do at Science 37 is bridge between research using telemedicine to reach patients directly at home. And Nora stands for Network-Oriented Research Assistant. I'll tell you about how we do that. The other way we bridge the gap is for the patient themselves. So patients can interact with their local doctors in medical care, interact with scientists at Science 37, and interact with personal health and gadgets and their own empowered decisions at home. So if you remember no other slide, this is the big difference in what we do at Science 37. The traditional approach to clinical trials is built around the doctor, and patients go to the doctor, and only the doctors doing the trial can have access to that trial. What we do is we center the entire trial around the patient at home, and we use technology to make it possible to bring the entire trial experience to the patient at home. So we ship drug to the patient, we recruit them through Facebook, we send a nurse to the home, we send a centrifuge to the home, whatever it takes to make it so easy. You can do it on weekends, your dog can be running around, your kids can be there. We make it that easy to take part in trials, and all the standards of research are the same. And the impact is what I'm going to talk to you about briefly. I'm not going to talk to you about the platform in detail, but it was not the easiest thing to build an entirely new EMR and telemedicine platform built around FDA standards, but that's what we did to make this happen. We actually checked with other systems and other technology companies around the ecosystem to see if they would build it for us, and they wouldn't. So we built it ourselves. And this enables all the way from engagement, recruitment, consenting, telemedicine. Everything about the trial is done through this platform called Nora. And the second part of our company is around logistics. So Nora allows that all to happen. The doctors in this operation can be anywhere. So you can be working in Tahiti and still take care of patients in their homes. And then the Science 37 study team is in Los Angeles, San Francisco, and all these different parts of the triangle interact through Nora. We knew, this is one thing that's different about Science 37, is we knew we had to develop a very strong patient-facing brand. So unlike normal doctors whose brand is their name, or in the case of a university, the university name Stanford is the brand of the doctor, we had to develop a direct-to-consumer, trusted science brand around doctors. And so this is our motto: be kind, useful, and awesome. And our brand has to be patient-facing because patients find us directly through all these different forms of media. I'm wondering which direction I point this. These different forms of recruitment. So we recruit patients directly through Facebook, Instagram, advocacy groups, etc. All of these different ways are wildly different than how a doctor normally engages patients, especially for clinical trials. So I'm going to tell you about 3 examples of what we've done so far, and then I'm going to show you a brief video about what it's like to be a patient in some of our trials. So this was the first trial we did, sponsored by Genentech. It's a rare, deadly skin condition called pemphigus vulgaris. You'll see a patient from this trial in the video. And we demonstrated back in 2015 that with this Metasite model, so 4 doctors taking care of patients in 7 states, we recruited patients 21 times faster than the normal hospital. So we even recruited people from Israel and other states we weren't working in. So this was a powerful demonstration in a rare disease of what we could do with this model. It got us a lot of attention. I'm going to tell you about 2 other cases. I can't talk about most of our work yet, but the second example is a trial we just finished in cluster headache, which is a disease like migraines, but it feels like there's an ice pick stuck in your head. It's awful. And we enrolled 80% of the entire trial with 100% retention, meaning no patients ever left the trial. And this is our recruitment is the green line. You can see we have kind of an unlimited knob of patients because we can reach patients anywhere. All the other lines are normal clinical sites around the globe in other countries, etc. And you can see that through different mechanisms, in this case through an advocacy group, we recruited patients one after another much faster than the normal system. And the final example, and what we're most proud of to date, we finished last fall, was a trial in acne where we did the entire trial with no buildings anywhere except our headquarters. We used 11 investigators in 10 states, and this type of trial would normally take 80 or 100 investigators all over the country or globe. We covered 37% of the US population, screened 8,000 people, and enrolled 372, delivering the first live bacterial drug to their home, cold chain, collecting microbiome samples back from the home, and did this all enrolled in less than 7 months to data lock in less than a year. Most importantly, the pie chart on the bottom demonstrates that we're reaching the average American population. So in this case, almost all of this was done through Facebook, and you can see that 42% of the participants were non-Caucasian. So this is unheard of in a normal clinical trial. It's typically 5% non-Caucasian. So the FDA and we are very excited about our ability to reach the average American, saving 30% enrollment time for this company. This company was also excited because not only did the trial work much faster than they expected, but the drug compared to placebo also worked. So it was a win for the company and a win for us. So, which direction is this? I'm just going to give 2 other slides and then show you this 2-minute video and then wrap up. So what we believe in is establishing value for the patients, value for the scientists, and value for people who develop drugs by putting patients in the center of the entire experience and making it easy for them. We use technology, that's true, but we also use local doctors, local nurses, and a logistics system that's quite disruptive. It's an ecosystem that we can scale. We know we can scale it now, but it's completely different than doctors who work at normal hospitals and normal clinics and patients who can't get to those places. It's developing an entirely new ecosystem outside of the current clinical trial system. So this video is a patient who is in one of our first trials. It's 2 minutes, and he'll describe what it feels like to be in our trials. And then there'll be 2 other slides, and I'll wrap up.
When he first started getting sick, most of the time all we did was cry.
My lips would crack all the time. They were constantly bleeding, scabbing up. It was very hard to eat. People would look at me funny in my classes, but I kept trying to go to school, and eventually I finished the second semester of my credential barely, because that's when I started looking really bad. So I went to the emergency room and I was successfully diagnosed with pemphigus. When I first thought about being involved in a trial, I was real concerned because of my lack of mobility. It would be hard to actually go to the hospital or facility on a weekly, monthly, day-to-day basis. But the team at Science 37 made it really clear that the trial was going to be patient-oriented, that they were going to have nurses come visit me, and the medication that I needed was going to be delivered to me, and that being a participant in the trial would help with the disease for others. I'm seeing progress with the treatment. As you can see, a lot of the marks and crusts have disappeared, and my confidence level has gone through the roof, knowing like, okay, we're getting somewhere. And I believe that I can continue now to finish my credential and become a teacher. When something arises or I'm not sure about what's going on with the disease, I just simply take a picture and I send it through my smartphone via Nora, and they're able to reply quickly, actually. I'm surprised at how quickly they do reply to let me know, like, this should be expected, or how do I care for it, how should I treat it if it's worrisome. My experiences with hospitals and other doctors' offices, you just feel like a number. With this type of trial, the doctors, the staff make you feel human. It's the gift of hope.
Thanks. So that's a real patient. Even I've watched that probably 100 times. I still get emotional about it. It's powerful. These patients typically don't have access to the world's best doctors or sometimes any specialists at all, and we bring them the best healthcare they've ever had through their phone, and nurses go to their house. We couldn't have done this without the ambition and innovation group at Genentech, who were brave enough to invoke us to start a company, and all these great clients, supporters, investors. And this represents our company and our patients. We're proud to say that 60% of our company is non-Caucasian minorities, and 60% of our company, including our executive team, is women. And for those that are interested in what we're up to now, these are some of the therapeutic areas of interest you can see. And then the types of work that we're doing, there's all kinds of different sponsors and areas of interest like digital therapeutics. We're now expanding to offer the platform and our know-how to other systems like sponsors directly, CROs, and academic partnerships through SaaS models, et cetera. So if anyone's interested in leveraging what we've done and we can teach you how to do this too, we're happy to talk about it. So thank you.
Amazing work. So you've seen a lot of technologies here the last couple of days. What are some surprising things that might be involved in clinical trials as real-world data from the Internet of Things, or things that will start to really impact what you measure?
Yeah, so our model is to basically democratize science and be able to do these types of trials at home. But we enjoy the luxury of all these other innovators and technology companies building sensors and devices and AI to actually do science in a better way, build better objective outcome measures. And we can put those into trials very quickly, directly into the home. It's one of the most fascinating things about being in this position is we get presented with the wildest new ideas. And being at that bleeding edge, I think, together with this ability to do trials at scale, direct to consumer, will empower all the other innovators around us. So it's a pretty exciting time to be part of this crowd.
Thank you, Noah. Yep.